Story 1. I've come to accept that getting old is the prize, not the being old part. Realizing that the passions of my youth on the path to get here are now out of reach. I will never climb, water ski, snow ski, surf, or probably even single-hand sail again. That acceptance is easier now than it would have been years ago. I am grateful that fate smiled upon me. Story 2. Loneliness. Not the self-isolation kind or the I am just an introvert kind. Straight up being alone, not wanting to be alone, and having nearly no opportunity to change it. Enjoy being in school. Enjoy college. Enjoy friendly hellos and good mornings. There comes a point when you get older and people, men and women, will just assume grown men are non-player characters who do not think about intimate connection. Or maybe I am just projecting. Story 3. Jumping awake at 3:30 a.m. You become excited because you remember a forgotten detail from an earlier conversation, but you forget with whom you were having the conversation. Story 4. The first time you get a haircut and they ask if you want your ears and eyebrows trimmed. You have a small pill container with the days of the week on it for your medication. The optician suggests getting varifocals. Story 5. These little white hairs on my goatee that I have to keep plucking out every now and then, but that can also be due to stress. Story 6. The biggest sign is when you genuinely realize that someday you are actually going to die. It is not theoretical. It is something that comes at you every so often, maybe when people around you start to pass away. It is definitely a real issue. You have to face it and deal with it. It makes you prioritize what is important. It makes you wonder if it will be easy and painless or messy and hard. It makes you consider what kind of legacy you want to leave and what will happen to all the things you think are important but really are not. For example, I recently resleeved my comic and magazine collection. You can choose standard sleeves that last 20 to 25 years or more expensive ones that last much longer. It made me think that I do not care about them lasting longer than that. In fact, this might be the last time I have to resleeve these. By the time these wear out, will I even care about them? What will happen to them when I get old or when I pass away? Collecting them brings me joy, but even if I leave them to someone else, they may not care about them. That realization made me sad. Story 7. When mature women are in their 60s and people in their 20s seem like annoying, childish little brats in an unappealing way. Story 8. Going to bed at 9:45 p.m. on a Friday night because you are excited to sleep in on Saturday. Then you can only sleep in until 7 a.m. Story 9. The gray hair is appearing. The lower back pain persists. Realizing that attractive young women now have birth years starting in the 2000s. Teenagers are calling me sir now. Story 10. It gets lonelier as the days pass. Almost all of your friends move on, have their own lives, and have children. You start to appreciate the ones that stick around, but even then, it just gets lonelier. Story 11. When you need to buy a vacuum and end up doing 8 hours of research, create a spreadsheet that compares 34 different vacuums based on various factors. Story 12. The music you grew up listening to plays on classic rock stations. When getting up from the floor, you do so slowly while quietly groaning, "Oh, my knees." Story 13. Some slang you said more than 10 years ago is not cool anymore. I recently heard the word skibbity and thought, what is skibbity? Also, I experience ailments after working out. I am no longer young. 5 years ago, I would work out after a 12-hour shift during which I walked more than 12,000 steps. Nowadays, after a 12-hour shift, I get home, eat, shower, and then sleep. I do not know how I did it back then. Story 14. Weight is coming on more easily than before. I could eat pizza a few times a week, now only once a week. Hair is not as thick. I would rather stay in and watch adult television shows. The gym is now just to stay in shape instead of getting shredded and huge. Story 15. The big one for me is that I used to be unawakeable. One time, a search helicopter flew over my house in the middle of the night. I found out when I saw my house on the news the next day. The helicopter must have been 100 feet over my house. Last night, I woke up because the neighbor locked their car at 2 a.m., and I guess I heard the horn go off. That is a big change for me. Story 16. Healing times for cuts, bruises, and aches take much longer. Sleep is no longer a recovery method for overwork. Your bones make noises. Flexibility disappears. Patience for liars and nonsense is non-existent. Story 17. It takes 2 to 3 days to make a full recovery from a hangover. You may notice more wrinkles and lines on your face, less energy, and increased difficulty losing weight. Story 18. I don't recover from minor illnesses as quickly. This past week, my children and I all had a severe stomach virus with vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and chills. By day 2, my children stopped vomiting. On day 3, they were recovering but still fatigued. By day 4, they were well. I am on day 5 and still have chills, no fever, constant nausea, and severe diarrhea. I feel dizzy when I stand. I can finally keep fluids down, so I am drinking plenty of electrolyte drinks, but I have not eaten in 5 days, and the thought of food disgusts me. Story 19. I just turned 31 and I have no clue so far. I love calling Green Day, The Offspring, and Limp Bizkit classic rock to annoy my coworkers, but that is it. Story 20. I had a hairdresser ask me if I have children a few months ago. I also thought about buying my first washing machine. Story 21. You do not have time or energy for drama anymore. 31 years old. Acting like a teenager is unusual behavior. Story 22. You have hurt yourself while sleeping. Hangovers last for days. You have a few contacts on your phone who have already passed away. You are excited about working on your house this weekend. Story 23. I know I am getting older because I started getting attracted to pots and pans and anything related to the kitchen. I now enjoy staying at home doing chores in the kitchen or in the garden. I am in my late 20s, but I feel like life is already slowing down, and I just want to settle down for good. Story 24. I got a rug yesterday and a pressure washer to clean it. I feel very happy about the result and cannot wait for it to dry to put it in my room. Story 25. I have 3 observations. I am 30 years old, so while I am no longer young, I am also not old. Eating junk food now affects my physical performance. As a teenager and in my early 20s, I could eat fast food all day and still perform excellently. Now, I notice the difference between eating healthy and eating junk food. I cannot handle hard liquor anymore. At 20 years old, I could casually drink Bacardi straight at a party. Now, if I even smell it, I feel like vomiting. Hard liquor causes me severe acid reflux. I am bald now. Story 26. This does not happen when your mother tongue is English, but there are languages where a more formal greeting is given to people of a certain age, not necessarily old, and a more informal one for younger people. You realize you are getting older when they start addressing you in the formal way. Story 27. When you were 16, you received your Social Security card, and the instructions told you to contact the Social Security Administration at age 60 to ask about retirement benefits. You kept track of that on your calendar, and now you have passed that date. Story 28. Go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. If I am in bed later than 9, it is a late night, even on weekends. Also, start sleeping in night clothes since I get cold. Story 29. When your back hurts more often than you go out, and when the music you grew up with is now played on the oldies station. Story 30. When you start making involuntary noises every time you sit down or stand up, and no one around you even blinks because they are doing it too. Story 31. I rolled my ankle at work and fell. People rushed over to see if I was okay. Not a single one of them was laughing about it. I thought, oh no, I am getting old. Story 32. When you consider that there are children being born whose parents were born after September 11th, it can be quite impactful. Story 33. You finally start agreeing with your parents and realize that most new generation music, slang, and behaviors are really stupid no matter how long you thought you would be cool. Story 34. When my neighbor walked over and asked if I needed help getting a simple wooden rocking chair out of the bed of my pickup truck, I was barely in my 50s. Story 35. Groans when getting up, especially from the floor, difficulty sleeping, talking more about the past than the present or the future, longing for the past. Story 36. I do not care to watch movies that have any kind of sex scenes. I am a very sexual person, especially if I am watching with my partner. It is a complete turn off. Story 37. Vision. Seriously. I turned 35 and started getting floaters in my vision. I got an appointment and was checked out. Everything is fine, allegedly, but I hate them. Story 38. When your husband declines the venue's offer of floor seats at a concert that would have put you 5 rows away from a full view of the band in favor of his nosebleed seats, because he does not want to have to stand the whole time. Story 39. When you make a reference to a big deal movie and get no response. When we have family movie night and it is my or my wife's turn, we have the kids watch old movies that we enjoyed so that we can make our references and the kids understand and respond. The parts of the movie that they like are different, but it is fun making the references with them. Story 40. Besides the constant pain of some body part hurting for no reason, none of your younger coworkers understand any of your movie or song references. Story 41. When your body actually starts responding to how you treat it. I miss the times when I could sleep in any position and feel good the next day. Story 42. Made a musical reference on another subreddit. Then realized that the music video in question was much older than the person I was responding to. Story 43. I have to say, if you were a young adult or teenager in the early 2000s, it really sneaks up on you because the decades have been so vague, the noughties, the 20s, whatever that is. But now we are in the 2020s, and it feels like a few decades have just passed. Story 44. The fact that I can truly feel my emotions and choose how to react appropriately is important. It may seem obvious, but it takes a different kind of strength to remain composed in difficult situations. Story 45. When you create a podcast episode about aging and then, a few months later, accidentally produce the same episode again. Story 46. Nose hair growing out of a nostril very quickly. I have to urinate at night even if I do not drink water before sleep. Young adults addressing me as Mr. Story 47. I'm 28. I climbed a small fence near the baseball field at the park to retrieve a stuck ball. I used to climb and jump off that fence all the time as a kid. I attempted to jump off, but my knees did not spring me up like they used to when I landed. Felt strange, as if my body was working against itself. I didn't like the feeling, but it made me realize that I am definitely aging. Story 48. For me, apart from aches and pains, it was seeing the humor of teenagers and just not getting it. I did not think it was funny, and I suddenly felt like a grandfather. Thanks to Reddit, I felt connected to the humor of the times well into my 30s. But at a point, rather recently, I was like, what? It started with the skibbity toilet nonsense. It has been more and more over the last couple of years. But that is life, I guess. Story 49. Mentally double-check to be sure you have everything before you sit down because the last thing you want to do is get back up. Then sitting down only to realize you forgot to pee. Story 50. I just got a new 2025 car, and it has a compact disc player in the center console. I was talking to her and said, I can't believe they still have compact disc players in cars. She asked, what is a compact disc? I feel old. Story 51. I was recently in the hospital for admission and had younger certified nursing assistants as part of my care. The younger staff did not understand one of the Monty Python or early 2000s references. I felt very old. Story 52. You just feel it. People tell me that I'm young, and I'm like, what? I'm 49 years old. That is not young. I have to say, though, that I enjoy being older. I have a few more decades in me, and I'm enjoying life right now. My father lived until he was 80, as did my mother. I exercise and eat a healthy diet, so I think I will be good for a few more decades. When I buy alcohol, the cashier is required to check my identification, but that is only store policy. My picture on my identification is ridiculous. It's intentionally silly. I can tell that they never look at the picture because they would laugh if they did. Story 53. My ankle hurt this morning for about 20 minutes. I did not do anything yesterday or the day before except go to work and come home. I work in an office. Story 54. I am bald, and there are already people who are legally adults and were born after the first time I got drunk. Story 55. Signs of getting older change over the course of your life. Need to get a job. ticketed by a police officer who is younger than you, feeling rough in the morning because your child had a bad night, attractive people now old enough to be your child. The president is younger than you. You have the money and time but not the stamina. Avoiding mirrors. Staying fit requires more diligence. Vacation and adventure planning includes consideration of how much longer you will be physically and mentally able to participate. Thinking about buying something includes consideration of how long you will be able to use or enjoy it. Couples with long experience showing the value of kindness and caring less about trivial matters. Story 56. My partner, his father, and I all went on a carnival cruise last week and just arrived back on Sunday. I decided to take the stairs on the cruise ship and off the boat. My watch averaged about 60 floors for 7 days. It is Wednesday, and I still feel it in my back and hips. Story 57. I mentioned I use a plastic container to soak my oboe reeds, and I was asked, "What is a plastic container?" When I replied, "The plastic container that camera film used to come in," he replied, "Cameras had film?" Story 58. I got a little too excited when I used a Mr. Clean magic eraser and saw for myself that it works exactly as well as the commercial says. Story 59. I'll be 56 this year. Everyone I work with is younger than me. Everyone. I exercise, lift weights, eat reasonably well, and am fairly active. I am not overweight. This is the first year I have ever felt my age. Everything takes just a little longer. Getting out of bed, putting on my shoes, getting into or out of my car, getting up out of a chair. It is not painful. It just takes me a few seconds now to get moving. It is difficult. Enjoy your youth. Story 60. You no longer bounce after falling over and need a few moments lying on the floor before getting back up. Story 61. The kids are asleep. I can go play some games or I can just stay in bed and doze off. But I really want to play. I think I will rest actually, the bed is so comfortable. Story 62. Hangovers are severe. You wake multiple times throughout the night to urinate and cannot sleep deeply for 12 hours, waking up feeling refreshed. Story 63. Watching high school comedies and empathizing with the parents and teachers instead of identifying with the main characters. Story 64. When I roll out of bed, I have to stand up unsteadily at first to let my injured lower back ease back into place. It is like overnight I became that old man with a dad bod. Story 65. For me, I want to go out and do more activities outside the city instead of staying indoors all day every day. Story 66. Getting sick results in worse symptoms. Even a common cold hits harder. Falling causes more severe bruising, and general body pain begins spreading to new areas. Story 67. You are now taking everything seriously, constantly thinking about what the future holds for you. Being consistent and disciplined in acquiring skills that will aid you. Setting goals and paving the path to attain them. Story 68. I laugh at most of the things my parents thought were so wrong that are normal today, like lying politicians. Story 69. A few. You start valuing a smaller circle of friends whom you don't hang out with all the time, but they remain the anchor people in your life, and they all have their own lives. You struggle to party as hard as you used to. You start thinking too much about the future and planning. You value your identity and who you are away from other people. Story 70. Getting dressed in the morning is a task. 50 years of smoking has left me really short of breath, and I am complaining about it. Story 71. Heavy grunt or sigh every time you have to stand up or sit down. Also, college students and people in their 20s look like little children. Story 72. Being more prone to injury and needing to take more time and effort to heal, but that extra time and effort does not result in as much recovery progress as it did 10 years ago. Story 73. I work with young people. I brought out some Scooby-Doo toys while at this girl's school. She said, "Oh my God, they are so vintage." I had a fourth wall break moment. Story 74. In the order I experienced them. 1. You actually need to work up to workouts instead of being able to start roughly where you left off, even after a couple of months of slacking. People in their 20s stop hanging out with you. You start seeing band names and other pop culture references that you do not recognize on a regular basis. Story 75. When you can listen to the 1990s Power Rangers theme song and not feel the urge to jump up and fight imaginary putties. Story 76. For me, it is the number of pills I have to take now. When I turned 30, it was 2 pills a day. Now in my 40s, I take 6 to 8 pills in the morning and at night. Story 77. When you see the way some of these kids dress and think you look so stupid, but then realize that it is their trend. Story 78. Your view on technology and updates changes from excitement about something new to a little apprehensive but able to adapt. Why can't it just be left alone? It works fine the way it was. Story 79. Wounds take much longer to recover. 10 years ago, if I had a scratch, it would fully heal in 2 to 3 days. Now, the same scratch stays on my skin for weeks. Story 80. When you start to become annoyed at how other men view human beings or how your friends view other humans. Story 81. Man, your scrotum looks 60 years older than you instead of the normal 30 years older. Woman. You see a handsome man at the store, then you see his even more attractive father. Story 82. When you get the familiar feeling of needing to urinate the very next second after the feeling comes, you are almost ready to urinate yourself and have to stop everything you are doing to go. Story 83. You start saying no more often than you say yes. I find this could actually be a good thing. It takes a long time to know what you personally want and like. Story 84. I noticed that I do not get hangovers anymore. I just get very tired and waste the next day. I will wake up after 7 hours and feel like I need more sleep, then proceed to sleep another 5 to 7 hours. Story 85. I am only 18, but in the past few months, I have noticed kids living their normal lives like I used to at 11 or 12 years old. I get very scared for their safety. I always wonder, where are their parents? Why are they playing alone on the street? Story 86. You crack every bone after getting up, and after using the bathroom, you immediately want to go back to bed because it feels easier than facing life. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.